Hello, today we're going to be learning how to juggle using the cascade method with 3 balls. So let's get into some of the materials that we need. Awesome. So as we saw, we just need 3 balls that are the same size and weight, similar to each other. So I have beanbag juggling balls and small tennis balls. I got these on Amazon. They're specific to juggling. I got these at the dollar store. They're actually dog toys. Now, as a beginner, you just want something that, as I said before, is the same size and weight as each other. So small oranges, such as cuties, and balled up socks will do the trick as you're starting. And now using the cascade method, we want to make sure that we're going in a continuous pattern of hand to hand, right? So we want enough room to our sides, just reach out, and front and back, reach out, make sure you have enough room, make sure there's nothing obstructing your path in case you need to step forward. This also means we need to have a flat, even, solid surface to stand on and balance, as we might need to shift our weight during this activity. We also want to make sure that there's nothing fragile around us, just in case we drop anything when we're starting off. It is very common that you're going to drop or throw a ball into something that you don't mean to throw it into. And also, lastly, our lighting requirements. We want it enough so that we can see and track the ball, not too bright that it's blinding, and not too dark that we can't see anything at all. These are going to be the general requirements when we're starting out, so let's get into the different steps of learning to juggle. Before we get into any actual demonstration, I have laid out 3 subsets of directions on how to juggle. Our first subset is juggling with 1 ball, our second subset, juggling with 2 balls, and our third subset is the final act of juggling with all 3 balls. So before I demonstrate anything, we're going to read through so that you have a better idea of what you're going to be doing throughout this activity. Our first subset of steps, juggling with 1 ball, is going to go like this. You're going to grab a ball with your dominant hand. For me, it's my right hand, and that's going to be my dominant hand throughout this whole activity. So after we grab our ball with our dominant hand, we place our arms in the correct position, which is going to be at our side, elbows bent to 90, and palms facing up towards the ceiling. So you should look like this when you start the juggling process. Our next step is to throw the ball from your dominant hand in an arch that apexes or peaks right above or at your forehead and travels to your non-dominant hand. And then after you throw that, you catch it with your non-dominant hand. Then you throw from your non-dominant hand, holding it the same way, in the same exact arch that peaks and apexes right at or above your forehead, and it travels to land into your dominant hand. Now this arc should stay in front of you the whole time. We'll get more into some tips of how not to move forward later on in the process, but the very last step of this subset of 1 ball is to continue this pattern until you're comfortable continuously catching the ball and throwing it in a consistent arc that peaks where it's supposed to. Okay, now next, our subset of steps with 2 balls. We're going to start pretty similarly. Grab 1 ball with your dominant hand, grab a second ball with your non-dominant hand. So you're going to have 1 ball in each hand. You're going to set up the same way, arms at your sides, elbows bent to 90, and palms facing up. Okay? Now, we're going to throw our ball from our dominant hand in the same arch we were doing, peaking at or above our forehead, right? And it's going to travel into our non-dominant hand. Now, when this first ball apexes, the next step is to throw the ball from your non-dominant hand in the same pattern to land in your dominant hand. So it's going to be throw, apex, throw, you catch the first ball with your non-dominant hand, the second ball then apexes, and then you catch the second ball in your dominant hand. Okay, so I'll go over that again. Pick up 1 ball, pick up 2 balls. Place your arms at your side, elbows bent to 90, palms facing up, and it's going to be a throw from your dominant hand, arch, throw from your non-dominant hand, catch that first ball, catch that second ball. Now we're going to repeat that step until we're comfortable with the arch being at or above our forehead with the apex, and we also want to switch what hand we're starting with. This was an issue that I ran into, so it's a step that I added of now we're going to throw out the first ball from our non-dominant hand and continue that switch until we're comfortable and consistent. Our final subset of steps is going to be juggling with all 3 balls. Now this first step is a little bit different than how we've been starting before. We're picking up 1 ball with our thumb, pointer finger, and middle finger of our dominant hand. We're picking up the second ball between our palm, our pinky, and our ring finger because we have to hold 2 balls in this hand. Once we have that, we're picking up a 3rd ball with our non-dominant hand and getting in that same exact position, arms at our sides, elbows bent to 90, and palms facing up, okay? And now we're going to throw the ball that is between our thumb, pointer, and middle finger up in that same apexing at or above our forehead, same arch that we've been doing this whole time. Once that has apexed, we throw the second ball from our non-dominant hand. We catch the first ball, and as the second ball apexes, we throw that 3rd ball that is between our pinky, ring finger, and palm, okay? So again, we pick up between these first 3 fingers, then we pick up between these. Then we pick up the last ball in our non-dominant hand. We throw from the first 3 fingers. Once it apexes, we throw that second ball. Once that apexes and we've caught the first ball, we throw that 3rd ball and continue the pattern of throw, apex, throw, catch, throw, apex, throw, catch, okay? We'll be able to hear that pattern a little bit easier once I actually start demonstrating, but just know those steps before we begin using anything physical and just have a better understanding of what we're going to be doing today using the cascade method to juggle 3 balls. Okay, let's go on to the demonstrations. Okay, the main goal today with the cascade method is to be able to juggle using all 3 balls. So in the end, it should look a little something like this. Okay, and see how I need some space out to my side and forward so that I could accurately reach and grab? Space requirements. Okay, so think back to that first subset of steps. We're only going to start with 1 ball. It's going to start in our dominant hand. And we want to make sure we're getting a consistent arch in front of us. Okay, if you notice something, when I'm starting, it's kind of going all over the place, but I want to lock my eyes in one point. And that point that I'm locking my eyes is the apex of the ball. And this is my first tip of the day. The tip of locking your eyes at the apex of the throw is so that we can have a better perception of when to throw the next ball. So although we're only working with 1 ball in this first subset of steps of throw, catch, throw, catch, throw, catch, we want to keep our eyes locked in that apex because once we move on, we'll be able to see the other balls in our peripheral vision, but we'll know when to throw the ball because that pattern is throw, apex, throw, catch. So again, this step, we're grabbing the ball with our dominant hand, putting our arms in this position, sides, 90, palms up. And we want to throw it in a consistent pattern until we're ready to move on to our next step, which is adding a second ball. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, now think back to our subset of our second steps. With 2 balls, we're going to grab 1 in our dominant hand, 1 in our non-dominant hand. Arms to sides, elbows bent to 90, palms facing up, okay? And now we're going to throw this ball, and it's going to go in that same arch that we practiced for the first step, that's apexing about right here. Now once it reaches here, and my eyes are locked on it, so I know when it's reaching this position, I throw the ball from my non-dominant hand, okay? So it's going to look a little something like this. Okay, So my eyes are locked there. I'm sure that there's a little bit of movement of my eyes as I'm tracking the ball, but for most of the time I do want my eyes locked there so that I know when to throw that ball. Now, the hard part of this step is to switch the starting hand. I am dominant with my right hand, as I've already said before, and when you start with your left hand, it's a little bit of a different feeling of the throw and catch pattern, as we saw there. But once you're consistent and you can go both ways with the throw, you're ready to move on to our next and final subset of steps, which is juggling with all 3 balls. So let's get into that. Oh, hello. You've unlocked the second tip of the day. Now, if you were having trouble with that second subset of steps using 2 balls, and the balls were moving forward, we can practice against the wall. So, if there was any problem of you throwing out like this and you couldn't catch it, we're going to face a wall and do this. See how it comes back to me just in case I hit it? And in this step, another tip of the day, you can hear the sound of throw, throw, catch, catch. Okay? So we want to be able, we're hearing that pattern, and if we have any difficulties, we practice against a wall before moving on to that third and final ball. See you in the next step. Welcome back. Our final subset of steps is juggling using the cascade method with all 3 balls. Now, some of it's going to follow along the same guidelines of what we've been doing, but the starting position of holding the 3 balls is going to be a little different. So let's see how that works. We're going to pick up the first ball with our thumb, pointer finger, and middle finger. So it's going to look a little bit something like this. Now we have our ring finger, pinky, and palm left to grab the second ball that's going to go in our dominant hand. So we'll pick that up, and it's going to look like this. Okay? And now we grab our third ball all alone in our non-dominant hand. So the starting position is going to be 2 in our dominant hand, 1 in our non-dominant hand. It's going to look like this. Okay? Now, our arm position is going to be the exact same. Arms at our sides, elbows bent to 90, and palms facing up. As you might have noticed in some of my examples before, my arms tend to drift a little bit up so my hands can catch the ball sooner than they necessarily should. But another tip of the day today is we don't want our arms drifting so far up that our shoulders start to shrug, or shifting so far down that they're at our hips. We want them to stay at around mid-chest level, so anywhere in this zone is fine, because we want to allow for adequate time and tracking to be able to catch and throw the ball. If they're too low, our hands are now out of our peripheral vision, so we can't properly track and catch the ball. If they're too high, we don't have any time to catch the ball as we're drifting upward closer to the apex. Okay? So, sides, elbows bent to 90, palms up, and we want to stay here about the whole time. Okay, the first step of this subset, that is our final subset, is to throw the ball that is between your thumb, pointer finger, and middle finger. This is our first ball, ball number 1. It's going to be thrown apex right here at or above the forehead, and its final destination is going to be our non-dominant hand. Now, once this first ball apexes, is when we know to throw the second ball from our non-dominant hand. So it's going to be throw, apex, throw. We're going to catch the first ball in our non-dominant hand as the second ball is apexing. Now, as the second ball apexes, we have the third ball in our hand between our pinky, ring, and palm. So second ball apexes is when we throw the third ball. Then we catch the second ball in our dominant hand as the third ball is apexing. Now that the third ball is apexing is when we know to throw that first ball again and start the process over. Okay? So it's going to look a little something like this. Okay? And that's when I would start the process over. I would have thrown that first ball again, okay? So, we're wanting to hear that pattern too. Is it throw, apex, throw, catch. Okay? We want to hear it while we go. Let's see if I can walk in. Okay, so it's gonna look like that once we practice some more, okay? Now again, our hands should stay in this position. If they drift up a little bit, that's okay to be able to catch. Now, again, thinking back to when we had that second tip of the day, if we start to joggle as we're using 3 balls, we can still use the method of practicing against a wall to not move forward or joggle in the terms of professional jugglers, of course. So that is the overall how to juggle 3 balls using the cascade method. Again, there's many different balls you can use, such as hacky sacks, oranges, balled up socks. Now we're gonna get into a little bit of the history and even some more tips of the day, and maybe I'll juggle a little more later on the road, but that is all the steps you need to know to be able to juggle using the cascade method with 3 balls. Hello, and welcome to the history of juggling. Did you know that juggling dates back to almost as early as 2000 BC, and the depictions of juggling as early as this times happens in the ancient Egyptian tombs, as there was figures and drawings seen of individuals throwing and catching round objects. Although no tools have been discovered that they've used for this, and there's no verbal or written down retelling of juggling, this is often thought of as the earliest instance of juggling. Later on, in the medieval times, is when juggling gained its popularity, as we see depicted today. Court jesters or even just entertainment groups for royalty had a lot of jugglers, and this was also the introduction of circus acts such as contortionist, tightrope walking, flame throwing, which is often seen juggled as well. And this is a way we can grade up juggling. If we want to get more dangerous, we add knives, fire, different objects. But we're still beginners, so we don't have to go into that right now. But this depiction of juggling in the circus is often seen today, although this is not the most common instance of juggling. Now, this is a category of work within occupations that very few people have, in circus acts or on the street even. Now, a more common section of occupation that juggling falls in nowadays is leisure, which I have picked up. It's just a hobby that people do to fill their time. Now, juggling is described as the act of keeping 2 or more objects in motion in the air at the same time while continuously throwing and catching those objects. Now, it's commonly described as that the objects are balls. As we've said before, they have to be likeness in size and weight, but that's usually only for beginners. You see people juggle all different kinds of objects, even mugs, swords, baseball bats, tennis rackets, and that's as people get more advanced. So the term of juggling uses objects in motion, not just balls. I hope that this was a fun review of a little bit of history for you, so you will be quizzed on this later. Just kidding. Okay, let's go on to some more tips and tricks at the end of the day. Thank you for watching. Thanks for that history lesson. Now that we've learned some of the history, we're going to dissect a slow-mo video of me juggling with 3 balls. When dissecting this video, we're going to make sure to notice anything that I'm doing right or wrong, as I am still a beginner, so I'm not a pro at this at all. My hands move up, but we'll dissect it a little later, okay? So let's get right into that slow-mo video. Okay, so as we can see, my setup is arms at sides, elbows to 90, and palms facing up. This is what your setup should be the whole time that you're juggling, as we've discussed prior. Now, when I start juggling, I close my eyes and really focus on looking at the apex of the juggle as I get set up. One thing that we don't see in this video is my feet set up, but we can talk about that later. So, when I begin to throw the first ball from my dominant hand, I start looking at the apex and tracking. This is when my hands start moving up, which is a negative thing that I still do as a beginner juggler. Although my hands are moving up, they're not moving so far up to where my shoulders are shrugging, which is a positive of this trait. So, I stop at this section of the juggle as I've done 3 full rotations and pause to reset. As I start the other juggle, I'll place the second ball back in my dominant hand, as this is something that I am more comfortable with as a starting position. You can do whatever feels comfortable to you as you're beginning, but it does help to practice with the two balls starting in both your dominant and non-dominant hand. I again focus on the apex of the throw when starting this juggle, and I'm able to keep my hands in a little bit more of a stable position as I bring them back down. Okay, now that you've had the chance to watch me juggle and maybe even practice yourself, was there anything that you've noticed me doing or not doing, or that you've noticed yourself doing or not doing in the process of juggling using the cascade method? Any patterns that stick out to you? Okay, something that might be less noticeable than me reaching my hands up or out or to the side is the pattern that they move in as I juggle. So might not be as emphasized as others, but the general pattern of your hands and arms should be throwing from the inside and catching from the outside. Throwing from the inside and catching from the outside. So it's almost like your hands are doing this whisk pattern, and it's always going to stay the same. No matter if your arms move up or to the side, it's going to be this throwing from the inside, catching from the outside. A good way to think about it is if you salsa, it's kind of like this movement without the hips, and keep your palms up. Don't get too crazy on the salsa, okay? It's just an analogy. So it should look something like this, and then you scoop your hand back under, and it helps you with your throw. So let's see how mine looks. Okay? Okay. So generally follow that line of pattern if you have any struggles with like being too far out and just throwing straight up in the air. Another thing that if you've had the chance to practice you might be doing is called a different method of juggling that is called the shower method, where you go and then you just hand yourself the ball in your other hand. Now I haven't practiced this method because cascade is easier for beginners, but some people when they start might think that this is easier in the long run. Now when you add a third ball, it's not going to be because you're going to run out of time to give yourself the ball. So always do the cascade method as you're starting out, and once you become more advanced, you can use whatever method you want and even add more balls. But for now, we're going to stick with that. Another tip of the day is to be in an area that you're comfortable in and that you can move safely in. I like to do it in my living room kitchen area more than I like to do it in my own room, but as you get more comfortable, you can do it in other areas, obviously. Another thing that I mentioned is the positioning of my feet. So we're gonna see that later on, but I like to put one foot in front of the other so that I'm in almost a half lunge position, so I can move more forward, back, step to the side, step to the other side, easier than if I'm just right next to each other, then it's almost like I'm falling. That's just something that I've learned as I've started juggling. It's all preference from this point forward, so whatever you find works for you is gonna be the best course of action. My feet from where I had you. I wanted to move you so that you can see my general body positioning of juggling when I'm set up on my solid surface in my comfortable area. So I put my foot in front of the other, almost heel to toe. I have them a little spaced apart, enough so that I can still step to the side or move if I need to. But generally, I'm in this position so that I can reach out. Or if I need to go to the side or forward, I can do that lunge with ease. Now, again, I talked about being comfortable in the position that you're in and being comfortable in the space that you're in. So start out wherever you need to, start wherever you feel comfortable. In order to grade this up or down, I know I mentioned before we could add knives, we could add different objects. But I think the easiest sense of grading down is just going back to those two balls and starting here. From there, just do one ball and get practice, or just practice eye tracking and making sure that your hand-eye coordination is okay. Now, if there's anything wrong with our lower extremities, a pretty easy downgrade or fix to this is just to practice juggling while we sit down. I hadn't done this before, so let's see how this works. Okay, so this is another way to grade down this activity if needed for any individual who wants to participate. Something that I've been trying to think about as well is how to alter this activity to someone who might not have proper use of upper extremities. One thing that I found on the internet is that you can juggle with one hand. I've practiced this and not sure if I can do it, but basically you want to do the circular motion out in front of you. So it would be like this, but you would want to catch the ball. So that is another option if someone wants to gain their skill in that aspect rather than using both of their upper extremities. So once you're comfortable enough to practice any of these different ways of juggling, get better at whatever way that feels right to you. Okay, now that you have the basics of how to juggle using the cascade method, you can go ahead and start practicing. Don't forget the basics and the tips. Remember, when we start with one ball, start in your dominant hand, same positioning as always, and get a consistent apex, peak, and arch, okay? Then when you add that second ball, be sure to listen for that throw, throw, catch, catch, because it should be throwing, apexing, that's when you know to throw the second one, throw, catch, catch, okay? When you add that third one, keep that hand positioning in mind. These 3 fingers hold the first ball, these 2 and the palm hold the second. 2 are always in your dominant hand. Then the third is just in your non-dominant hand. And it's throw, apex, throw, catch, apex, throw, catch, okay? And remember to listen for that pattern as well. We're throwing from the inside, catching from the outside, being in a comfortable position. Our eyes are always locked in at that apex area, okay? And we want to be sure our body can move as needed, as well as if we're moving forward, what's the one thing we can do? Practice against the wall, okay? And moving forward, don't know if I mentioned this, it's called juggling. It's a term jugglers use. You should use it. Juggling is to move forward while juggling. Okay, now that we know these tips and we have the basics, we can go out into the world and juggle. Who remembers when juggling first started? 2000 BC, it was a test. Get on out there and start juggling. Hope this video was helpful to you and that you learned to juggle and got out there and just did it. Please go back and review the steps if you need any help, and hope that the tips were helpful in your journey of juggling.